Hola, ¿cómo están? Mi nombre es Magali Urquiza, soy directora de la unidad de Biotecnología en la consultora GB. Estamos en esta oportunidad con uno de los principales referentes de mi sector amado, John Maraganore. Muy buenas tardes. Voy a hacer una introducción, así conocen a John. John es partner en ARC Ventures, es un fondo institucional de bio, uno de los fondos más grandes de biotecnología en todo Estados Unidos y me atrevería a decir también del mundo. John fue CEO y director de Alnylam Pharmaceuticals desde 2002 hasta 2021. Construyó en términos de mercado 25 mil millones de dólares en términos de capitalización de mercado y también hizo más de 20 acuerdos históricos y también de los más grandes a nivel corporativo dentro del sector farmacéutico. Desarrolló drogas, tiene drogas para enfermedades poco frecuentes. Bueno, ¿qué puedo decir? What can I tell? What a legend. Una leyenda dentro del sector de biotecnología. And we have a pleasure and the honor to have you here. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Maggie. It's so wonderful to be here. And I really am excited about talking to you and your followers and talking about biotechnology in general.
I always love when it comes to talking about biotech. So these are the interviews I enjoy the most. Well, John, just for a kickoff, what can you tell us about the ecosystem of the U.S. venture world?
Yeah. Well, despite the capital market environment in biotech, which has been for the last 3 years, has been very difficult, the venture environment is still actually very strong. There are a number of venture funds that have raised new capital, significant billions of dollars of capital. And there are still a good number of companies that are getting started all the time. One of the reasons, Maggie, is that the scientific innovation going on right now is unmatched. It's unmatched, in the world. And so many great opportunities for, the science to be, harnessed into new medicines. And the business model for biotech is also very well established now. If you're successful in taking the science and making medicines and commercializing the medicines, you can build significant value. We did it at Alnylam, but it can also be done in many other companies. So I'd say the environment is actually, generally speaking, very good. And it's only going to get better because we expect interest rates to go down, inflation to get decreased, and that'll increase the level of investment in biotechnology.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the different niches across biotech that you will see with, if you had to rank them like from with the lowest to the highest, like a progress or advances, how would you rank them?
And what was the first part of
The
the question?
areas that advance the
Oh,
most to the ones
yeah.
that advance the least.
Well, listen, I think we've seen huge advances with new platforms, new genetic medicine platforms like RNAi, which I spent time with, even with gene editing. We've seen some remarkable, the first drug approved for gene editing for sickle cell anemia is recent. So we're seeing some great advances on what I would say is the tip of the spear of innovation out there. Things like, genetic medicines, gene therapy, RNAi, gene editing, and so forth. At the same time, we're seeing some incredible innovation on more common disease drugs. So one of the big opportunities now that we're seeing globally is in the obesity space with the GLP-1s, the semaglutide category of drugs that both Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk have been the leaders in globally. And those medicines are having a profound impact on the treatment of obesity, but also a number of comorbid conditions that associate with obesity, diabetes, heart disease, kidney disease, sleep apnea, liver disease. It's just incredible what's going on. And that's clearly going to be one of the most important categories, for public health in a long time. But there's also a lot of new innovation in the obesity space as well. So we're going to see more of that happen. And then, even in diseases like Alzheimer's, there's the beginnings of new therapies that are beginning to get used for the prevention or delay of Alzheimer's disease. Still has a long way to go, but there's some promising advances there as well. So I think in general, I would say that the top areas of excitement these days are in the genetic medicine space that I was involved with when I was at Alnylam, but also in some of these prevalent disease areas like obesity and Alzheimer's.
Mhm. And in terms of leadership, the U.S. have been known worldwide and historically for being a leader. And it's, I mean, biotech, in Brent Sanders' words, even though fully endorse that, biotech has been the crown jewel, like, of the U.S. economy. How do you see biotech position in terms of leadership against China or Russia? How do you see this on this race?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I have to say, I don't think very much will happen in Russia as a competitor in biotech. I mean, there have been some efforts historically, but I think that the level of investment there, the opportunity for real innovation, also the economic environment for reimbursement is very negative in Russia right now. So candidly, I'm not too worried about Russia as a global competitor in biotechnology. On the other hand, in China, you're seeing very significant progress in China for new biomedical innovation. And I think that it's fair to say that it's probably second to the US and the world right now on that type of innovation, surpassing what historically we've seen in Germany and the UK or even Japan. We're seeing China become a very, very strong country for biomedical innovation. I still think the US is very, very strong and will continue to be very strong. But I think clearly China is emerging as a strong player in the biotechnology space. And I think that's good. I think it's good to see other innovation happening around the world in an industry like biotechnology. And hopefully, even Argentina, we can start seeing some progress there as well.
Yes, we're definitely excited about that part. But in terms of China, I remember, well, now I'm working at the consultancy firm, but I think I will never stop being an analyst at heart because I love it. But a few years ago, whenever data from China came out in terms of clinical trials, we were like skeptical, but even more skeptical when it comes to trial. Is that skepticism remains like still around whenever it comes out? Because in order to be
Well,
a competitor, you
yeah.
really need to have like top tier data. And is that still the case with China?
Well, that's not the case anymore, I think, in China. You begin to see many examples of innovation coming out of China, even clinical studies. A very good example is a company called Legend Biopharma. Legend has the leading CAR T therapy for multiple myeloma, and it's technology that came out of China. It's approved in the United States, and it's the leading cell therapy, CAR T therapy for multiple myeloma. And so that came out of China. I'm on the board of Takeda Pharmaceuticals, and we recently in-licensed a drug for colorectal cancer called fruquintinib from a Chinese-based company called HUTCHMED. And I had never heard of this company before, but they have a fantastic therapy for colorectal cancer that is now being commercialized globally by Takeda. So there are now quite a few examples of innovation coming out of China and being commercialized in the rest of the world by global leaders in that regard. And I think we're going to see more of that, Maggie. But, even though China's getting much, much better, I think they still have big gaps that they need to overcome. There's still a challenge with the reimbursement system in China, which is really not especially favorable for innovation, especially in the rare disease setting. It's actually very negative toward rare disease innovation. And so they have a lot of things they still need to fix over there before they can be maximally competitive at the end.
Mm-hmm. And I have three more questions, actually. I promise it will be short.
Yeah.
But in terms of social crisis, we have seen Europe has been quite a biotech hub, a major biotech hub when it comes outside of the US. With all this ongoing social crisis, do you see any eventual potential risk to the industry? I mean, to the normal flow or development of the industry?
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, I do. I mean, I do have some concerns about it. I mean, clearly, a fundamental question, Maggie, is, can we afford all the innovation that's being created? My view is, how can we afford not to pay for that innovation and reward that innovation? Because the cost of continuing with terrible diseases like Alzheimer's and cancer and obesity and so forth is far greater than the cost of paying for innovation at the end that reduces those economic and societal burdens. So I think that while there are challenges in the ecosystem because of the cost of the innovation, there's even greater challenges if we just allow the diseases that we all have to ultimately overwhelm the system with cost. My favorite example is Alzheimer's. There's nothing to treat Alzheimer's right now effectively. There's maybe one drug that's been approved,
Thank God you said it.
yeah, yeah. But it's a huge area of enormous need, and the economic burden of Alzheimer's to society is immense. And so, if there were a very effective drug to delay or prevent Alzheimer's from happening, it would save enormous amounts of economics from society for society. So I am generally optimistic that if our industry innovates and creates true innovation, that our societies will be willing to reward the innovation and that we would have a sustainable system over time. But I think we always have to be conscious of challenges that exist in the world. And, there are many, like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. And now that you mention in neuroscience, in terms of Alzheimer has been one of the most heavily invested areas across biotech, despite of having the lowest clinical success rate across all industry, unfortunately. Even though there are three drugs that have been approved by the FDA, do you see that market is shifting in terms of mindset and or I don't know, trying different modalities for treatments? Do you see this shift, or are we heading exactly with the same hypothesis?
No, I think there's a shift. For example, there's been some very recent genetic data on the role of ApoE4 in Alzheimer's, which I think is beginning to influence the minds of innovators around that pathway. There's also some significant evidence for neuroinflammation being a major part of the Alzheimer's pathophysiology. And so I think you're beginning to see more and more investment in aspects of Alzheimer's disease, which are different than the so-called A beta hypothesis, which historically has been the major focus of essentially everybody in Alzheimer's disease. So I think that's good because we need to test multiple hypotheses to find real answers that are going to be disease modifying for a disease like Alzheimer's. And I think we're beginning to see more and more of that happen.
Mm-hmm. And one last question, and thank you so much for your time, John. It's a
Sure.
pleasure and my honor to have you here.
Pleasure.
We have seen the rise of different kind of buzzwords from machine learning, eventually drug development platforms, or the Apple technology or the iPhone technology coming down to biotech. Now we are witnessing the rise of AI. Do you
Yeah.
see? We always do this question, but do you see biotech being influenced or impacted by the rise of AI?
Yeah.
at least on the
Well,
drug development side?
I mean, I think the answer is yes, no doubt. The question is how and what's going to be the impact. I mean, if you look at AI technologies like AlphaFold, which is a way of predicting the structure of a protein based on the sequence of a protein, in my lifetime, I never thought this would happen. And yet it's amazing that you can predict the structure of a protein with incredible accuracy with AI. Um, and that already is going to massively assist in the drug discovery and development process in an important way. There are also great AI tools to discover new targets in human disease. I mean, we still only know a small percentage of the targets that are really involved in human disease. We talked about Alzheimer's. It's a good example. Everybody's been focusing on A beta. Okay, what about the rest of the disease? So that's where another area where AI can be very, very helpful. But I also think that, like many new technologies, it can be overhyped. And I think that there has been a little bit too many bubbles, I would say, in the AI space. Believe me, I'm a big believer in it, and even involved with some companies that are pioneers in the space. But I think that we have to be realistic about how AI will transform biotechnology, just like we have to be realistic about any other technology out there. These things tend to take a little bit more time and tend to make more stepwise changes in an industry, and then over time it can be a huge impact. But I think we just have to be mindful of how long it takes.
Well, it's great to hear your thoughts because you are one of the leaders in terms of like the platform, RNA platform, and yes, innovation takes time, and well, people are get too excited like too soon, at least to me. Maybe I'm way too skeptical still, but it's like it takes time innovation to come up or pop up. So
Yeah, it does.
thank you so much. Thank you so much, John, for this interview and for the time taken.
Yeah,
Again, it was an honor.
yeah, a pleasure. And thank you, Maggie. So good to see you.
Thank you. Bueno, espero que hayan disfrutado esta entrevista de la misma manera que lo disfruté yo. Mi nombre es Magali Urquiza, soy directora de la unidad de biotecnología en la consultora GB y los espero acá en la otra entrevista por acá por Bolsar. Muchas gracias.